I wonder if I could make it. It's almost getting to 8 o'clock p.m., and I am still a few more steps away from home to get to my computer to listen to CNT Radio's Cosmopolitan Culture Club. The best of the best music from around the world. Can't wait! I think I made it! CNT Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Looking for a sports podcast that covers sports weekly as well as gets you set up for the day? Check out Weekly in Sports with me, Scott McGregor. We give some shout-outs of the week to podcasts like this one and those who do them. Discuss the Blue Jays, Bills, Raptors, and more. To learn more, check out the Sports for Beginners Facebook page. Search Sports for Beginners. Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports. From the fans' perspective, here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. Hello everyone, my name is Scott McGregor. It is a privilege to be with you for a Friday show for June the 27th, 2025. Joining me in studio today on episode 18 of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. You all know him, you all love him when we have him on for the program here. We didn't have our usual, let's get going, let's set the tone here. But you know what? That's okay. We got the introduction music in there before, and maybe we had a little bit of a break before we brought in. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, he's not from Locked On. He's not Joe Marino. He most certainly is not Matt Perino. But I guess you could call him his partner in crime. It's Ryan Talbot. Ryan's back for another episode of our show. Ryan, great to see you. First and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Great to see you as well. And with that being said, just a quick note here for everyone listening and maybe watching on YouTube. The reason why my face is not visible right now on my camera is because I've been having some trouble with my camera. So we only have Ryan on the show or in camera view. But I am wearing a Buffalo Bills shirt along with my sweater that I have on currently as well. So Ryan, let's get into it. First, I want to talk about last season. I know we're getting ready for a new season, but who impressed you last season? I'll ask you, and you can ask me the same thing. For the first 3 questions of this thing, I want to ask you, which 3 Bills players on last year's team in 2024 impressed you the most, and are you happy that they've stayed with the Bills?
Yeah, so go ahead.
So basically, I know some of our players from 2024 are not on the team anymore, but of the remaining players, which 3 from that team that have stayed on the team have impressed you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll take Josh Allen out of the conversation. He's been great, but he took his game to an elite level last year. He would be an easy option. But going outside of that, James Cook, obviously, first and foremost. The touchdown production was off the charts. He was not really much in that department. His first few years in the league, he was very productive in terms of yards and yards per carry, catching the ball, etc. But last year, he really put it all together in terms of scoring as well. 18 total touchdowns. You can go to Khalil Shakir in the wide receiver room. He keeps ascending. Was close to being a 1,000-yard receiver last year. Wouldn't surprise me if that were the case this year, even with a new addition like Joshua Palmer in the wide receiver room. And then I'll go on the defensive side of the ball. I'll go with Christian Benford. He really took his game to the next level and played like a true number one cornerback.
Yes, okay, so Christian Benford, and you also mentioned Josh Allen, which brings me to my next question. I know you probably were following this. I wasn't following it too much because I don't pay attention to player personal incursions or whatever you want to call it. But he got married to Haley Steinfeld, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big Hollywood actress. Someone that he wasn't dating her for a long time, but they must have known. When you know, and their relationship moved along pretty quickly. Just got married at the end of May, and both of them seem very happy. So that's good for Josh, good for Haley, and Josh is not a movie star at this point, but you're starting to see him do a lot of commercials now. He's going to be doing a lot with Snickers this year. He's already featured on a lot of their candy bars, ice cream bars, etc. Sleepy, something you take to help you with your sleep. I see he's doing a commercial for that. Gatorade. The list goes on and on.
Yes. Personally, I take Josh out of the question as well, but he impressed me last season. I was also impressed by Christian Benford. I know Micah Hyde didn't exactly play last season, but he's under what we call like a mentor role. He's not going to be out there a lot to play as much. And speaking of Micah Hyde, we mentioned in our chats before we actually came on to our show to do a show together. We mentioned that Trey White was back. Tre'Davious White was back. So you had mentioned you don't exactly know how much is left in the tank. What role for 2025 do you think he will be playing, even if he dresses up for some of the games this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's taking on a reserve role. Ideally, the Bills obviously have Christian Benford starting at one spot, and they want Max Hairston, their first-round pick, to start opposite him. Now, they're not going to just hand the job to Hairston. He has to win it. But when you look at the competition in the room, it's really Hairston's job to lose. Trey White is coming off of 2 serious lower body injuries, and I will say to his credit, his tape with the Ravens looked a lot better than his tape with the Rams, the beginning of last year to the end of last year. So maybe he's getting a little bit of that back in terms of the trust in his leg, being able to pivot, being able to cut, all those things that you need to be able to do. Maybe he has more confidence in it now, but he's not the player that he once was, obviously, when the Bills drafted him in the first round of the 2017 draft. So I don't have a ton of faith in terms of expecting him to take on a huge role. Now, if injuries occur, he could be that next man up. But they brought back Dane Jackson, someone who did not play well in Carolina, a team that signed him to a decent contract. It just didn't work out there. But he's coming back to a system in which he knows well. He doesn't get beaten. He's not the best athlete, but he knows this system, at least, and that works to his favor. Doesn't have the injury history of Trey White. He gets dinged up, and not to the obviously no serious injuries like what Trey White suffered. And then you go down the list. Dorian Strong, a draft pick that I really like. I love the skill set. I love the fit. But I'm not expecting him to take on a huge role on the outside this year, anything like that. Jamarcus Ingram will be in the mix. And then obviously you have Taron Johnson as that nickel slot cornerback, still one of the best in the league.
Yes, and I found out through some of the reports I was being shown, the Bills have a guy in Joey Bosa. Do you think he might suit up for some of the games? In particular, maybe Sunday Night Football?
As long as he can stay healthy. That's the big knock on Bosa. He has not been healthy the last few years. The talent's there. The production is there when he's on the field. He is someone that can wreak havoc on opposing quarterbacks, but he misses a lot of time, nagging injuries that just seem to limit him in terms of how much he can play. But the Bills, they gave him a good amount of money, but it's a one-year deal. So I like that a lot more than what they tried to do a few years ago with Von Miller, multi-year, big money, which, pre-injury, he was producing. I think it was like 8 sacks in 8 games before the initial injury, and then he just never really returned to that form. Where if Bosa is injured again this year, at least you're off the hook of that contract after 1 year. You're hoping that, Greg Rousseau is going to start on the other side, but when Bosa's off the field, when they're giving him a breather, they need someone else to step up. And it could be Landon Jackson, the rookie. Javon Solomon coming into year 2, he flashed a little bit as a pass rusher. And, AJ Epinesa, the ceiling. He's been a 6-sack guy the last few years. No one that I expect to just suddenly, a light bulb to go on and him to be this double-digit sack guy. But they have enough other guys in the mix to at least contribute here where I do like that room on paper.
Yes, I agree. You mentioned Von Miller. When he was still a Bill, I'm very curious, what did you like about Von when he was healthy? And what were you, I don't want to say panic, but what were you, when was it the point that you were saying, even if he's healthy, I don't know how much longer he can stay a Bill, and I don't know how much longer the Bills can tolerate having to deal with his injury?
Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down. Nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much most of last season, unfortunately. You'd see flashes with his pass rush arsenal. He'd win. Maybe the quarterback would get the ball out right beforehand. He wasn't getting a ton of sacks, but you saw little bursts and flashes of the Von Miller of old. But you're not paying him for flashes and for near sacks. You were paying him big money to get after the quarterback and actually finish the play, and it just wasn't happening. So he's still solid against, the run, still flash at times, but based on the money he was making, it seemed like a no-brainer to part ways with him after this past year in 2024, which the Bills did. He's still out there now. It wouldn't shock me if he returned to Denver or even, I don't know about the Rams and their situation. They have a lot of young guys, some young promising guys on that defensive line after last year's draft. But maybe he goes back to a team he's familiar with. Maybe he waits for an injury in season. But the fact that he's still out there now, it's pretty telling. And in terms of what I liked about him, he was still a good locker room guy. He was always willing to meet with the media after games, give, quotes to us. It wasn't a lack of trying. It wasn't like he took the foot off the gas pedal. It's just he couldn't get to the quarterback the way he once had.
Now, for some of our listeners who may just be tuning in to Shout, do you mind shedding a little bit of light on what you guys have been doing as of late? I know we've been doing some mini camp, and I know you guys have had Wignut shows, which I really try. Even if I don't make it out in person to any of them, I really try to make sure, okay, Wignut show, okay, can I make the live stream or do I have to save the live stream so that I can watch it later?
Right, and appreciate you listening, watching, whether it's live or after the fact, for sure. We recently did podcast on my 53-man roster projection for this year. We'll have another one here in the near future. We have a Wignut show on Saturday, July 5th, so not too far away. That will be at the Buffalo Airport location. Then once we get to training camp, Wingnuts comes up to Rochester, and they make their wings one day. So we'll have a show whenever that day is selected. Nothing finalized quite yet there. But yeah, I mean, once we get into training camp, we're talking about daily podcasts.
Yes, and we try to keep here on Sports for Beginners, we try to keep it to a minimal of a show a week, but we've been doing post-game, especially during the Bills season, where we've done it week in, week out. We're also trying to do some pre-game, and I know I mentioned to you my game plan as of week 1. I don't know how that's going to go over with the Blue Jays schedule, given when it comes in, but if the Blue Jays happen to be on the road that Sunday when we get to game 1, maybe I can squeeze in a little pregame before they kick off, before the ball game begins, and then do the post-game show as I'm planning to do it ahead of Monday Night Football in week 1, which, by the way, for everyone listening right now, that is a post-game show for week number 1 that you can also hear on the ice and behind the benches. It will be the Sunday Night Football matchup between the Ravens and the Bills. Speaking of the Ravens and Bills, I know that's week 1, but curious now, Ryan, when you look at the schedule, obviously the Bills aren't playing on Christmas, and they aren't playing, I don't think they're playing on American Thanksgiving, but from now to the bye and then on, what are 3 of the 4 games you are thinking about that are like, I need to watch this, whether I have a podcast to do or not. I need to watch this game. I know you and Matt watch every game, but
Right.
what are a couple that stand out besides the prime time?
Right. If you're talking early in the season, the division games are still always interesting. The Jets, I like the new coach, Aaron Glenn. I like a lot of the moves that they made. I don't necessarily believe in Justin Fields as the quarterback there, but I think that'll be a good road test for the Bills after a very tough home game against the Ravens. The Dolphins the following week will be interesting. Atlanta's a game in October where Matt and I are both going to be on the road for that one, so that'll be exciting. A ton of Bills fans out there in Atlanta for sure, so that's going to be a great time. And then post-bye, because, you have a little break there, you have the Panthers after that. That's not a game that I'm necessarily looking forward to in terms of, I don't expect much from the Panthers this year. I like what I saw from Bryce Young late in the season there, but I still think they're a few years away. But that's going to be another exciting opportunity for Bills fans in, the Carolinas to go watch a game with Buffalo, because there's a ton of fans there as well. And then you get into those big matchups, which I do like that they're spread out this year. You mentioned the Ravens in week 1. You have the Chiefs many weeks after that.
Yeah, that's a big one that I'm looking forward to.
Eagles late in the year, which I'm torn on in terms of whether I like it or not, because I sit there and I look at it, and maybe it ends up working out in Buffalo's favor. Maybe the Eagles have the number 1 seed locked up in the NFC, and at that point, because it's week 17 of 18 at that point, and maybe they're only playing their starters for a half. They're already taking the foot off the gas pedal a little bit. Or maybe it works out the other way, where the Bills aren't playing for much either. They've already clinched the division. They know what their seed's going to be. Who knows? I kind of wish that game would have been bumped up a little bit earlier in the season, just because I don't know if you're going to get both teams playing all 4 quarters at that point.
Yeah, when you talk about all 4 quarters, and let's go back to the Kansas City game. Of course, that's later on after the bye and before we go to the Eagles. But my brother and I, we talked about this last season when the program was going, or when the season was on, and we were talking about, even after Christmas, we were talking about, well, we don't think the AFC, never mind the AFC East, that was already clinched by Buffalo, but we didn't think the number 1 seed in the AFC was actually clinched. Well, at least, it was clinched on Christmas by the Chiefs, but we didn't think it was, because when you look at it, on paper it probably says something else, but when you looked at it, it looked like the Bills and the Chiefs were competing for that number 1 seed, and Baltimore, given where Baltimore was, I think they were still in the conversation for that, but I think they might have been ahead of Buffalo. I got to remember where they were at that point in time.
They actually kind of came on late in the season and took the division away from the Steelers. So they weren't really in the mix for the 1 seed last year, but they came on strong late in the year. They won their own division, obviously, and we know how the two teams met in the playoffs. But, I'll let you get back to your question about the Chiefs, though. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. That was actually around the Chiefs anyways, because I don't know. I mean, I really like what I've been seeing with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott in the Josh Allen era as a Bills person. And even with a Dolphins fan who I haven't followed on Instagram, but I like his reactions when he reacts to Dolphins games and whatever. I just think you gotta let it play out, and who knows, maybe the week the Bills play the Chiefs, we might be finding ourselves battling for the number 1 seed. I don't necessarily think that will happen, but we'll wait and see where the records are for Kansas City and for Buffalo. But again, just to add to that, I was saying last season on my Bills post-game shows that I do, which are bonus content, by the way. They also can be heard, as I said before, on the Ice and Behind the Benches, my brother's podcast, hosted by me, of course. I was mentioning that if we had to go through Kansas City in the playoffs to beat them and advance to the big gator that we want, which is obviously the Super Bowl, but we haven't had that opportunity yet, even though we've made it to the playoffs now 5 years in a row and won the AFC East championship division that many times, but haven't managed to break the barrier and get through the AFC championship game, because that's another big gator. When you're talking Super Bowl, you want to talk, okay, are we the last team of the AFC, and who is out there at the AFC championship game that we're going to need to compete with to ensure we make it to that big gator game that Bills Mafia, I know, especially as a fan, for me, I have been dreaming of since I became a Bills fan, even in the Josh Allen era. So what's your take on that? I mean, I don't think we will be fighting for the number 1 seed of the AFC with Kansas City when we play them, but I feel like if we do end up playing for that, hopefully it runs in Buffalo's favor.
Yeah, I mean, based on where they play this season, it's not like it's at the end of the year, so the 1 seed will still be up in the air, whether it's Buffalo, Kansas City, or another team. At the end of the day, the Chiefs caught a ton of breaks in games, late in games. You look at a Raiders matchup where there was like a fumbled snap by Aiden O'Connell where he wasn't ready for the ball. There were some games where there was a missed field goal. They easily could have had 3, 4, 5 losses last year, but everything went their way, including winning coin flips in overtime. I don't expect that to happen again this year, first and foremost, so they're not going to have the same type of luck, which is exactly what they had in the regular season, late in matchups. I also think their division is significantly harder this year. I look at Jim Harbaugh, and what the Chargers did last year was solid. It was good. They're going to be better this year, though, going into another year with him at the helm. Even the Raiders now have a head coach in Pete Carroll that I think he's going to have them ready to go in these big matchups against a team like Kansas City. It doesn't mean they're going to win either of those games, but they're going to be harder matchups for Kansas City. And then Denver. We know how good Denver was last year, too. The defense was great. Year 2 of Bo Nix should be better. The run game is going to be better there. And they have a lot of weapons at wide receiver. So, I'm not going to sit here and predict Kansas City misses the playoffs or anything like that, because they still have the best head coach, arguably, of all time, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and a really good roster. But I think they're going to be pushed this year, and it's not going to be an easy cakewalk for them in their division and to the 1 seed in the AFC.
Now, before we start to wrap things up here, I want your take on Aaron Rodgers. I know a lot of people, before we found out he was signing with the Steelers, now we're finding out this most likely will be his last year playing. Even if he does retire after this season, do you have any expectations for how he could play on the Pittsburgh side of things, the Steelers side of things?
So, I don't think Rodgers has a ton left in him. You look at the stat line from last year, it looks good on paper, but I watched enough games to see him struggle for 2.5 quarters, quick 3 and outs, short series. He wasn't the same player that he was in Green Bay, and that's father time. It's caught up to him. That being said, you look at Pittsburgh's roster, you look at their wide receiver, top wide receiver in DK Metcalf, that is a true weapon there. They are still going to be able to run the ball. The defense is pretty solid. They're going to be in the mix for a wild card spot. I don't know if it goes much beyond that. That's not an easy division, though. The Browns are still the Browns. They're not going to be in the mix in that division, but
Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
What a busy traffic on this Friday evening. I am almost stuck in this traffic for the last 40 minutes. And there is no way, I think, for me to get to the show. The CNT Radio Song Bank, which is going to start very shortly. It's one of my favorite shows. And my, what a way to wind down for the weekend. Perfect 2 hours of fun-filled music. And she has so many great features. Sound of Music, Undercover, Foreign Exchange. Name that tune. And the big wheel that she spins. For Who's That? Or Where Are We? We cannot forget about the international stage. I have never come across such a great show in my life. I think I will have to press hard on my accelerator and go as fast as I can to get home in time. Wow! Look! I made it! I am almost there! CNT Radio, making your day brighter, one song at a time.
Hey everyone, it's your host Scott McGregor of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Wanting to remind you to join us for another special holiday double trouble on Sports for Beginners as the New York Yankees come north of the border to take on the Toronto Blue Jays. Join us for a special Sports for Beginners Season 4 episode / a original Blue Jays game recap. That's right, we got the Yankees and the Blue Jays series recap on Sports for Beginners, part of Season 4. Plus, the Los Angeles Angels will be in town. Join me and perhaps Thomas, who may join me in studio, for double the Blue Jays game recap. One, part of Season 4 of Sports for Beginners. The other, traditional Blue Jays game recap. Both following the Canada Day extravaganza 4-game series between the New York Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays, and of course, the 3-game series weekend between the Los Angeles Angels and the Toronto Blue Jays. Happy Canada Day to all listening to this recording at this time. We'll see you after Canada Day for some Double Trouble Canada Day the following day after Canada Day and after the homestand. Until then, lights up, let's go.
Looking for a good hockey podcast that covers your favorite hockey teams and mine? Check out On the Ice and Behind the Benches, where we chat about our favorite hockey teams from puck drop to the last play of the action. To learn more, follow the On the Ice and Behind the Benches Facebook page. Search On the Ice and Behind the Benches.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
You know that the Ravens are going to be very good. I expect the Bengals to have a bounce back year and be in the mix in that division. So Pittsburgh's going to have to play very well around Rodgers. The offensive line's really going to have to hold up, though, because he doesn't have the mobility that he once had.
Yes, and to that point, I do listen to a couple of Pittsburgh podcasts. I don't listen to Mark Madden or Double M a lot. I'm more of that on the hockey side of things. But speaking of that, let's keep it back to Buffalo. I'm very curious. Do you have any expectations for Josh this season at quarterback? I know he's going to be the number one quarterback, but with the rookie class coming in from the draft, and some of the old guys, we mentioned Trey White, he's returning to the team. You talked about that you believe we don't know how much he has left in the tank. He could possibly end up retiring eventually. Mm-hmm. And I know you and Matt mentioned, before we get to Josh, I know you and Matt mentioned Jordan Poyer. I don't think I've seen anything that says he is coming back to Buffalo, but I did see a couple of reports saying that Jordan would love to return to Buffalo because he wants to retire there.
Right.
So what's your opinion on Jordan should he end up returning, should news break about that? I don't think it will happen yet, but what's your opinion on it?
Right. I think maybe if anything, Jordan might find another team to sign him for one more year. If he were to come back to Buffalo this year at any point in time, it's going to be a Micah Hyde situation, in my opinion, where he's not going to be signed to the main roster. He'd have to accept a job on the practice squad, and he would be a great benefit to the team if he was on the practice squad, coaching up Cole Bishop, much like Micah Hyde did a year ago, helping Taylor Rapp, helping depending on how things shake out. There's Derek Forrest, there's DeMar Hamlin, Cam Lewis. His leadership would help a great deal, and if an injury were to occur too, he could either be signed to the main roster or elevated from the practice squad. I don't see a path to the main roster for him at this time in Buffalo. He did take a step back last year in Miami, and it might be the system. It could have been, or part of that scheme. I just think, again, the age, the injuries are starting to slow him down a little bit, not taking the same angles that he once could. Ideally, if he does sign, it's either going to be on, if it's long, I don't even want to say long term, but if it was in season, I think it'd be on the practice squad. Realistically, I think just whenever he decides to call it a career, he'll sign a one-day contract with the Bills to end his career with the team where he's spent most of his prime.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I believe, if he does not sign with the Bills for this season or next season, I believe when he signs a one-day contract with the Bills, that will be to retire. As if Micah Hyde and Trey White retire at the same time, that remains to be seen. And to Josh's point, I asked about expectations. Do you have any interesting expectations for Josh with the rookie class?
Yeah, most of the rookie classes on the defensive side of the ball. Exon Hawes is a tight end, the number 3 tight end that I think is going to come in and help immensely with the run game in terms of his blocking ability. But there's not a lot of rookies that are going to necessarily help Josh Allen this year. That being said, I think he's going to be in the mix once again for MVP. I don't know if he can limit his turnovers like he did 1 year ago in terms of the lack of fumbles, the lack of interceptions. There were some lucky breaks on some balls that could have been picked off that were dropped that worked in his favor. So it'll be tough to replicate the turnover stats. But I think, obviously, his passing yards, his rushing yards, his overall touchdowns will be right up there among the best in the league.
All right, we're with Ryan Talbot. So before we get to how people can get in contact, you mentioned July the 5th. That is going to be a Wignut show.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you would like to explain? I know Matt does a lot on Shout, but is there anything that you'd like to tell us about what the experience in person is like at
Yeah,
Wignut's?
in person shows are great because our events start around 6:30 at night, so we go around, we mingle for the first 30-45 minutes to an hour. Then we go live with the podcast. We do our segment. We have one of the original owner Ed come on each episode, and then following that, after we're all done, we have fan questions. Fans come up, ask us questions, we interact again. Then we hang out after too. So it is a lot of fun for any fans that are in Western New York, or if you just want to make the trip out to Western New York. We have a lot of dedicated Bills fans. One couple in particular that make the drive from Syracuse every time we have a live show.
All right. Yes, and I have heard these messages when I've been able to tune in to some of the shows, and sometimes you can't really sometimes when you're listening to other podcasts, even sports podcasts like Shout, Locked On Bills and everything like that, it's hard to say, okay, how many episodes am I behind, or how many episodes have I actually listened to, and how many episodes have I either marked as played because I couldn't get to them. So I technically try to make room for as many as I can, and Wignut's episodes on Shout are a must for me, whether it's on YouTube or later on the podcast platform, if I can get to them. If I can't get to them, then I try to figure out, okay, when is the best time to watch a Wignut show? Should I have either missed the live stream or missed it on YouTube, but found it on the podcast platform?
Right. I mean, if you can't, if you watch live, we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and X, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. But listening after the fact's always great as well, because we're on every podcast platform. You can play the episodes back on those social media platforms that I already mentioned. So it works either way. We just appreciate if you're listening in, whether it's live or after the fact. Like I said, any support's good support.
All right, so with that being said, before we get down to sports for beginners and all that, where can people find you? And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for your time.
Mhm.
And we definitely should be doing we definitely could do a couple of shows on season shows of sports for beginners when we can. We're just gonna have to work around yours and maybe Matt's time so that we can get the both of you on. But, we should definitely try to do shows when it's in season, maybe bi-week if we can, or mid-season when things aren't really when not a lot is going on, and then or maybe just off season like we have been doing before. I know we're in the off season right now, but I meant like after the season ends, whether the Bills make the playoffs, whether they win the trophy, what have you. I'd always love to do shows with that, and even come on to Shout, to be honest, to run something with you guys as well. But where can people find you? You've mentioned where they can find a podcast. Where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on most social media platforms at Ryan Talbot Bills. That's X, that's Instagram, that is Blue Sky. And I'm not overly active on Blue Sky. X is the main platform that I use with the Bills reporting and news. And then, on Facebook, I share a lot of my work and articles in the different Bills Mafia fan groups, as well as on our Buffalo Bills on NY Up page.
All right. So, and you can also find me on Facebook. I don't dislodge my personal Facebook there, but my Instagram handle is smc_87 on Instagram. On X, I am at Scott McGregor 3. I am on Threads under the same username I have for my Instagram. And we also have a Facebook page for Sports for Beginners. You can catch up on all the action there, even for live updates on our end of the month programs for weekly in sports. And of course, you can check into our Discord server, which there will be links to that Discord server provided in the description of this episode as well as a link. If you, as a Bills fan, if you're not hooked on becoming a Buffalo Bills insider, well, I'll let Ryan take the handle on this one because I know he and Matt mentioned this a lot on their show. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, so you can text with Matt and myself. We're really going to start ramping things up again once training camp begins. We'll share our observations from each practice with the insiders before they go live on the site. We ask fans, hey, we're going to be talking with this player, this coach, anything specific you want asked, and we try to work that into our questions to them. So it's a really good back and forth. It's a way for them to find out how specific players are doing it at that point of the year. When roster cutdowns happen, they'll get the breaking news on who's let go before we publish those on social media. So there's a lot of perks to it. It's a 2-week free trial, and then after that it's $3.99 a month, so cheaper than a cup of coffee. And you can join by texting.
And also there was a link there as well. We have it in one of the previous programs we did with you on Sports for Beginners, where we had you on the program, and I have the link as well, but it's also available on Shout. We have had that link put out from Shout. The link that we have from Shout, we got that out on our social medias as well. So if you haven't listened to an episode where we've had Ryan on, or if you have, great. If not, it's okay. We will provide you with the link to the subtext for the Bills Insider Group. That is where you can get one-on-one conversations with Ryan and Matt. I stick to email, or maybe I'll DM them on Instagram or anything like that. But yeah, you can do that, or you can check out the link. And then, as Ryan said earlier, you can also substitute the podcast by texting for all the information that you need to become a Bills Insider. And again, it's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. You know what, Ryan? Anytime I have a guest on, I always wonder, Scott, why haven't you jumped on... I always wonder to myself, why haven't you jumped, Scott, on the bandwagon to not just promote the show, but get a sponsor in or get someone's radio station on? And I've done that with my friend, actually a family member of mine named Jim. We're in conversation with that. We're trying to figure out what we can do with that, but we'll see where that goes with Thomas and myself. I also have been talking to Sienna Tregiani of Sienna T Radio, and she told me if I wanted to get like an ice cast set up, I had to contact a guy named Jonathan. So we will see how that goes. But as far as lives go, we haven't really been doing a lot of lives because I have to figure that all out before we commit to doing that. One of my first problems I had with it was trying to figure out, okay, can I pause while I'm in live stream? And I found that I could not. So I was like, okay, so that's good to know. I have to keep the conversation going as I'm on live. Do you and Matt ever find that, I won't say annoying or whatever, but do you find that you guys, when you're live streaming, do you find it that you're able to do your live stream without any issues, or do you find sometimes you have some issues when the live stream is on? I know you guys continue the show when you do your live streams and you never really stop, but when it's all put together, you do have points when you do stop.
Sometimes there's technical glitches or problems. One of our internets will go out, either mine or his, depending on if there's a storm or something going on. So we love the live shows though, because one, we can interact live with the people in the chat when we're doing it from our studios or our houses, whatever you want to call it.
All right, well, he is Ryan Talbot. I am Scott McGregor. This is episode 18 of season 4. We would have had Ryan on for episode 17, but speaking of one episode after that, once we are done with this show, stick around after the Blue Jays game. I will be back with you to talk all things Blue Jays Guardians right after the game goes final at a certain time. Until then, that is Ryan Talbot. Of course, we all know the Bills' record from last season, and we know that they face a team in week number 1 where they faced this team in the playoffs. It's a AFC playoffs matchup rematch. What were your thoughts on the Ravens' design of that play? The last play where Mark Andrews dropped the ball.
Yeah, play design was great. Execution was there. He just dropped it. So that's the difference between giving the Bills about a minute and a half or a little under 2 minutes to try to win the game with a field goal or score, and then just being able to ice the clock because he dropped it after recovering the onside kick. So unfortunate way for it to end from their side of things, obviously, but that's football, especially late in the year, cold weather, drops can happen, but the execution of the play itself was pretty flawless.
All right, thanks Ryan for this, and we will be back next week on at this point in time, the Blue Jays will be playing the Athletics, the PWHL. We know the draft just happened on Tuesday. Lots of good stuff to discuss on episode 19 of season 4, but our plan to go until Christmas for season 4 and our ongoing seasons continues. Thank you so much to Ryan for joining us. Maybe Ryan will get one more or two more visits in before season 4 wraps up. If you want to get in touch with our celebration in August, you can do that by sending an email to sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com or checking into the Discord or Facebook page servers. And of course, we will be posting news of that on our personals as well. I will also be tagging Ryan later on Instagram when we launch the show, so that he can also tag me as well and get you guys in there. But again, if you want anything to do with Buffalo, even if it's Shout or Locked On Bills, there's also Eric Wood's Centered on Buffalo podcast. Check that out. My first episode I checked out was the team reporter, Maddie Glad. Haven't had a chance to check out any of the other episodes yet, but Eric does a great job. And as I said before, thanks to Ryan for joining us. Really appreciate his time. Look forward to doing it again real soon. All right. With that, we'll see you then.
Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.